And it's time to get into another conversation. Now, tomorrow, being the 6th of October, is World Cerebral Palsy Day. Yes, it's very important for us to get into that conversation because, especially when you live in places like Ghana, countries that have, ideologies like we do in Ghana, cerebral palsy is usually not dealt with very kindly by a lot of people. And traditionally, you find that people have been described all kinds of very derogatory ways, and their families also take a toll as a result of that. But we've been joined in the studio by Dorothy Ajabu, who is the chairperson for the Ghana Pediatric Physiotherapy Interest Group. Of course, doing a lot in that area of bringing awareness, creation, and all that. And Sheila Carter, who is a business development manager with Trust Sports Emporium. I'm going to find out how is Trust Sports Emporium also interested in the physiotherapy and cerebral palsy. All right, ladies, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for having us.
All right. So, first of all, what is cerebral palsy? Let's give everybody the information and demystify.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning to your viewers. Thank you for the invitation. Cerebral palsy is a disorder that affects the brain, and it results in balance challenges, posture challenges, movement challenges for the child. It usually occurs in children below 2 or 3 years. And this is because at that time, the brain is still developing.
Okay.
So an injury can cause like adverse effects on it, yes. And it could occur in a woman who is pregnant. It could occur whilst the woman is giving birth. And it could also occur whilst the baby has been born. Yes, it has various signs and symptoms. So, for example, a child who has cerebral palsy, the entire body can be affected. You would realize that the child would have difficulty walking, for example. Maybe the child could also be drooling because the muscles of the tongue is affected, the muscles of the mouth is also affected. A child may have writing difficulties because the muscles of the hand is also affected. Half of the body could be affected, the entire body could be affected. Only the legs could be affected more than the upper limbs. Only the hand can be affected.
So it's very random.
Yes, it depends on the aspects of the brain that has been damaged.
Okay.
So that would result in the various or varying symptoms and signs. Yes.
Now, medically, is there a known cause, as in it's in the brain, but what's causing it? What's triggering it?
Okay, so medically there's no known cause for it, but there are predisposing factors or risk factors. So as I mentioned, a woman who is pregnant, for example, probably she may not know that she's pregnant. So she could be taking particular medications that could affect the brain development of the child. So even before the child is born, the child is predisposed to having cerebral palsy. Or maybe the woman has an infection, let's say rubella infection or German measles, for example. Or maybe the one is exposed to radiations. That could also affect the developing brain of the child. So even before the child is born, the child is predisposed to having cerebral palsy. Now, during labor, the woman may have a difficult labor. So the child may have difficulty in crying. That's birth asphyxia. And that's, if the child is not able to take in enough oxygen within a few minutes, it may predispose the child to having cerebral palsy. If the child, after the child is born, if the child has jaundice, neonatal jaundice, and it is so common in Ghana, yes. So before you leave the hospital, you should ensure that your baby's eyes are not yellow. Even when you get to the house, expose baby to daily sun. Come out of the house. Don't keep in our culture, we usually keep babies in the house for like a week before we expose baby out. So bring baby out, expose baby to sunlight, look at the eyes, look at the palms. Sometimes you think baby is fair, but it is yellow.
It's yellow, that is not fairness.
So that could predispose the baby to jaundice. Cerebral malaria, that is why in Ghana we insist that pregnant women, babies who have been born, they should sleep in treated mosquito net. Yes, it's so important because when malaria in a newborn is dangerous. So when it is not treated early, it could cause cerebral malaria, and that could affect the brain of the child. And prematurity, preterm babies are also likely or predisposed to having cerebral malaria.
I see. Yeah. So you've basically given us the understanding that it's infants that are highest at risk.
Yes, below 2 or 3 years.
Below 2 or 3 years. Is there any possibility of somebody being, say, let's say 10 years, 12 years, 13 years, and after the fact, getting cerebral palsy?
Okay, so the definition limits the condition to below 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
After, let's say, a child who is like 10 years, 4 years, getting maybe malaria, getting cerebral malaria, could have a brain injury, but it will not be termed as cerebral palsy.
Okay,
yes.
okay, fantastic. Now, is it curable?
It is not curable.
Okay.
However, the damage is permanent. It is not progressive.
Okay.
That means the injury or the damage to that particular aspect of the brain does not spread.
Okay.
However, its effects can get
progressively worse.
Yes, without any kind of intervention. That is why we pick it out early, right from the hospital, and then follow them up. It's a whole team. So the rehabilitation team, the physiotherapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist, the pediatrician, the psychologist. As the baby goes to school, the special needs educator. It's a whole team. For the social worker is also involved. Yes. So although it is not curable, a child can have a good life. I know one who is in the university right now, second year. So it is very possible to have a good life, but it has to be seen early, and they have to come into the hospital early and have early treatment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I actually have a friend who has been living with cerebral palsy all these years. She's in her 40s now. Works as a microfinance. She owns a microfinance company. She employs people. She's an artist. She's an author. But she's been living with it, you know. And to all intents and purposes, it's quite debilitating. You can see, the restrictiveness of it and all that. But I want to find out from you, Sheila, what's Trust Emporium's interest in cerebral palsy, and how are you involved?
Okay, thanks for the question. Trust Emporium, as we all know, is a sports arena. We have in there quite a number of facilities.
Yeah.
One of our facilities is the Bokum Fitness and Physio.
Okay.
And our physio, meaning that we take care of neuro condition cases.
Okay.
That makes us connected to the physiotherapist as well.
Okay.
Now, as we're thinking as management what we could do for our CSR, we realized that one neuro condition that is not spoken about, which has a lifetime, effect on that person, is cerebral palsy. And also because it's always globally celebrated on the 6th of October, and October is a pink month, which overshadows that concern. We thought it wise that it would be good to bring some level of awareness and make it known to people that physiotherapy is not just for stroke patients. This is a lifetime condition.
Okay.
However, stroke, you get it, whilst you go, depending on certain activities that one engages in, but this is a birth condition that should be given some sort of, attention and help in the rehabilitation. And as a center, we are willing and ready to help in creating that awareness and also helping in the rehabilitation.
In terms of the rehabilitation journey, Dorothy, what are some of the improvements that people can have in terms of the quality of life? If they get
rehabbed
early,
Okay, thank you so much for that question. It is very possible for a child to become an adult and still be independent. As you mentioned, the friend of yours employs other people. You see. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we pick them up early, sometimes from the hospital, okay, and then follow them up. So even before they leave the hospital, so for a child who is born and has jaundice, is admitted in the neonatal intensive care unit, we pick that child up, we give the mother an appointment, the physiotherapist does that, follow the child up, they come back when they are about 4 months, 2 weeks, we do a screening to see whether the child is developing normally. So some of the red flags that we look out for, if the baby is, let's say, 7 months, baby is not sitting at all. If baby is 5 months, baby does not even have neck control. There's a head lag.
Okay.
Is not able to look at any kind of object or even mommy's face. There's a red flag. If baby is a year old, baby is not even crawling. Is a red flag. Or baby is 1 year, 6 months old. Baby is walking but probably dragging the feet.
Yeah.
Or prefers using one hand as compared to the other hand. Yes. Or the one hand or the leg is one hand is fisted most of the time. It's a red flag. So when we bring them in early, we educate mom. We set goals with mom.
Okay.
What would you want your child to be able to do?
Okay.
If mom says that, oh, I want my child to be able to sit, then we plan the treatment because you cannot give medicine to somebody who refuses to take it.
Yeah.
So we plan treatments with mom, and then we also rope in other rehab specialists. This is also so important. So the speech therapist has to come in, the occupational therapist has to come in. They need to see a pediatrician because there's a review time for them that sometimes they need to take medications. Sometimes some of them have seizures, for example, so they need to take medications. And when they come in early, it's so beautiful. The mothers or the parents will attest to the fact that this child came in not being able to do a lot of things, and now they can do a lot of things.
Let me ask you, so with trust and preference facilities, where do you see the best help that they come into the synergy, the relationship with what you're doing, with the facilities that they have?
Yeah, I'll take that. We're willing to now consider the service to cerebral palsy patients.
Okay.
Because we have specialists within the facility that can offer that kind of help as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I mean, I think it's a fantastic initiative that you're on, and it's so critical. What are some of the things in terms of the stigma and challenges that people have that you've gone through personally, that and then even as a practitioner, a physiotherapist practitioner, what do people say about you being involved in it? You see, so I'm asking two questions.
Yes.
There's one of people's stigma towards children who have cerebral palsy, but then you, as a practitioner working with children cerebral palsy, is there any stigma against you?
Okay, so I'll take the first question. The second question, sorry.
Okay.
There's no stigma attached to me working with children. I see a general concern when I talk about what I do. And other parents who have children without that condition usually ask, do they get better? Okay. That's a concern, so there's no stigma attached to with respect to the second question. The first question, there's massive stigma. So one of the things that physiotherapists we usually do especially when they're about, because Ghanaians take their children to school around like 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, and the child is not sitting. And the parents want to take this child to nursery. Yeah. And then the complaints that we get, we tell them, send the child to school. And then the complaints that they get, because baby is drooling, other parents are pulling their children away from the school.
Wow.
Or because baby is not sitting, the teacher says that, okay, so the child ought to sit before they come to school. But we have devices, we have sitting devices that we can put the children in and they can be in school. I have stories where children are able to sit in school. And they're sitting, because you have to quite, in our Ghanaian schools, you sit a lot in school. So when they get to school, for a child, there are a number of times when children were not even sit, they were learning to sit. And when they joined the school, they were able to sit because we provided sitting devices for them to take to school. That's the schools who were willing to take these children. There's one instance where I had to go to see the proprietress of the school, and she was so friendly because she had one child with cerebral palsy, and then she made ramps just for her. And I thought that was so thoughtful. So there are some there's no stigma, and then there are some who have that kind of stigma. I also remember there was one story, when they get bigger, they can't put the child on the back and bring the child to the hospital. So when you get a child who is 6 years, 7, 8, they kind of stop rehabilitation, which is quite sad. And there was an instance where the child was in a wheelchair, big child was in a wheelchair. The mom, I think, could not come again. So I reached out to her and she said, no taxi wanted to take them.
Wow.
Yeah. I was so surprised, and it was so disheartening. So she just decided, okay, so I will not bring my child to the health facility to get rehabilitation because no one is willing to take, and she cannot carry the child on the back and bring the child to the hospital.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the stigma.
And on the streets, we know there's a local way of explaining such children. They call them insuba. Exactly. So just that alone sometimes
it's very derogatory and very unfortunate. Yeah. So anyway, final words from you.
I think the main goal for the book on fitness physio is to put the word out there to say that this is no fault of parent, this is no fault of that child. However, there's help. Our physio center is open. There are other supporting centers as well. The Physiotherapy Association in partnership with us and the interest group in partnership with us are willing to give whatever help. We're going to be reaching out to corporate Ghana because we intend to put a lot of activities like a marathon and a walk in the next couple of months to create more awareness. So when we're ready, when we come to corporate Ghana, this is for a good cause.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Dorothy, thank you. Sheila, thank you very much for coming through. Well, we've been speaking with Dorothy Ikua Ajabu. She's the chairperson for Ghana Pediatric Physiotherapy Interest Group, and Sheila Carter, the business development manager for Trust Sports Emporium. And the conversation has been about cerebral palsy and the awareness creation that we need to give to make sure that we give a better conditions of life, better experience of life for people that are living with cerebral palsy, because it's not a death sentence, really. It doesn't have to be.